Good day, dear listeners. Every family keeps its secrets of joy and sorrow. Today we will meet some people whose story will make us think about the value of close relationships. Ludmila was packing her luggage with that meticulousness that is formed over 32 years of marriage. Every item in its place. Her husband's shirts separately. His swim trunks in the side pocket. The sunscreen, the very expensive one he loves. Her fingers worked automatically, but her thoughts flew somewhere far away, to that point on the map where the blue sea meets the sky. Mom, are you serious? Her daughter, Ekaterina, stood in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest. He's not taking you with him, he said. Business trip. Ludmila didn't lift her eyes from the suitcase. It's a conference. A conference at a 5-star hotel on the coast. In July. Ekaterina emphasized every word. Mom, wake up. Ludmila was 54 years old. She had worked as an accountant at a factory for 28 years, raised 2 children, buried both her parents and her mother-in-law. In these years, she had learned not to notice many things. Not the smell of foreign perfumes on her husband's shirts, not his late returns, nor that special gentleness in his voice when he spoke on the phone, thinking she couldn't hear. Ekaterina, I know what you mean. Ludmila finally raised her head. Her grey eyes were calm, like a lake on a windless day. But I am 54 years old. Where should I go? Anywhere. The daughter burst out. You see what's happening. He doesn't even hide it anymore. Gennady Petrovich Somov, the director of a construction company, a respected and wealthy man, had indeed stopped hiding a long time ago. For the past 3 years, his secretary Jana, a tall blonde with eyes like ripe gooseberries, had been his constant partner at all corporate parties, exhibitions, and business events. Let Mom decide for herself, a voice came from the corridor. Their son Maxim, 31 years old, a programmer and his father's favorite, entered the room. Maybe this is comfortable for her. What business is it of yours? Ekaterina snapped. You live in Dad's apartment. He gave you the car as a gift. Of course you defend him. I'm not defending anyone, I just don't get involved in other people's lives. Ludmila listened to the children's argument and continued folding clothes. Her hands weren't trembling. In 32 years, she had learned this too, to keep her hands steady when everything inside is breaking. She remembered how she met Gennady. She was 22. He was 25. He was a cheerful young site manager, with dimples in his cheeks when he smiled. He called her Ludmila, he literally carried her in his arms. Once he carried her over a huge puddle near the dormitory. She laughed then, throwing her head back, and believed there was no one happier than her in the world. When did that end? Ludmila didn't know. Probably when Gennady became Gennady Petrovich, when the construction company started bringing in serious money, when their small 2-room apartment turned into a spacious house in the countryside. Somewhere along the way, she got lost. She was no longer Ludmila, but simply the wife, the mother of his children, the mistress of the house. A function. I ordered you a ticket, Ekaterina said suddenly. Ludmila froze with a shirt in her hand. What? For the same flight. The same hotel. The room next door was free. Ekaterina. Maxim went pale. Have you gone crazy? Dad will find out, he'll kill both of you. Let him try. Ekaterina approached her mother and took her hands. Mom, enough. For 32 years you were silent. For 32 years you endured. You deserve the sea, you deserve rest, and you deserve to look him in the eye and tell him everything you think. Ludmila looked at her daughter, and something inside her, a small and oppressed part that still remembered that girl carried in arms over puddles, suddenly moved. I can't, she whispered. You can. Ekaterina replied firmly. You can. I am a mother myself. My daughter is 1 year old and that's why I understand you. I understand you like I never understood you before. While Paulina is 1 year old, I still have time ahead. But you live now, Mom. Okay. The next 2 days passed like a fog. Ludmila packed a suitcase for herself for the first time in many years. She took out of the closet that sarafan she had bought 5 years ago and never worn. "Where are you going in something so loud, Ludmila?" Gennady had said then. She found an old swimsuit, tried it on. It fit. She wasn't thin, but not fat either. An ordinary woman over 50, with traces of time on her face and body, with grey strands in her brown hair, with wrinkles at her eyes. Old, her husband would tell her. Ruin. She had gotten so used to these words that she had stopped hearing them, or thought she had stopped. On the day of departure, she left by taxi earlier than Gennady had planned. She sat in the airport cafe, drinking a tasteless cappuccino and watching the people around. Families with children, couples in love, businessmen with briefcases. Everyone was flying somewhere, everyone had a purpose. But her. Why is she here? To look the truth in the eye. She heard Ekaterina's voice in her mind. Gennady appeared 1 hour before takeoff. Ludmila saw him from afar, still imposing, though he had gained weight, with that boss's walk he had formed over years of leadership. He was wearing a new shirt, she hadn't bought it, probably a gift. And walking beside him was Jana, 27 years old, platinum blonde, 12-centimeter heels, short dress, huge sunglasses on her head. Ludmila stood up. She didn't understand how her legs carried her toward them on their own. Her heart beat as if it wanted to jump out of her chest. Her palms were sweating, but she walked. Gennady saw her first. His face, she would remember that face forever. First elongated in surprise, then twisted in anger. "Ludmila, what are you looking for here?" "I'm flying." She was surprised herself at how calm her voice sounded. "Where?" "To the same place as you. To the sea." A pause fell. Jana giggled beside him, covering her mouth with her freshly manicured fingers. And then Gennady said what dotted the is. "But where did you set off to, old woman?" His voice was loud so everyone around could hear. "With such a ruin, it's shameful to go out to the sea." Ludmila stood and looked at the man she had lived with for 32 years, at the father of her children, at the man to whom she had given her life. Gennady's words hung in the air like a slap. Ludmila felt the gazes of the people around, curious, pitying, malicious. Someone turned away, pretending not to have noticed. Someone looked insistently, like at a free show. Jana was no longer giggling. She looked at Ludmila with that special expression young women have when they see their possible future and refuse to believe in it. "Gennady," Ludmila began, and her voice trembled. Not Gennady, but Gennady Petrovsky, her husband cut her short. His face filled with blood. "And don't you dare embarrass me in public. What the hell are you looking for here? I told you clearly. Business trip." "Business," Ludmila repeated like an echo, looking at Jana. The latter suddenly became interested in her phone. "Yes, business." Gennady grabbed his wife by the elbow and pulled her aside, away from prying eyes. "Jana is my secretary. She is flying for work. But you, why did you come?" Ludmila pulled her hand away. Inside her, something was changing with every second, with every word from her husband. As if for 32 years she had been frozen, and now the ice was beginning to crack. "I am your wife," she said quietly, but firmly. 32 years, 2 children. I have the right. The right. Gennady laughed, and his laugh was malicious, stinging. "What right? You are a nobody. All your life you lived off my back. I fed you, clothed you, built you a house. But you, what did you give me? Children. Children." He snorted. "Maxim, yes, he's a smart boy. But your Ekaterina is hysterical, just like you. She's always sticking her nose where it doesn't belong." Ludmila looked at this man and tried to find in him that Gennady who once carried her in his arms, that cheerful site manager with dimples in his cheeks, the one who recited poems to her, funny and stumbling, mixing up the lines, the one who cried when Maxim was born and kissed her hands thanking her for the son. Where is he? Where did that man disappear? "Listen to me carefully." Gennady leaned toward her face, and she smelled his cologne, A new, expensive one that she hadn't bought him. Now you turn around and go home, and sit there quiet as a mouse, and when I return, we'll talk. Do you understand me? Something in his voice was so final. Ludmila suddenly understood. This isn't just another affair, it's the end. He has already decided everything. This trip isn't a whim, but a statement. A demonstration. And if not? She heard her own voice. Gennady straightened up, surprised. In 32 years, his wife had never told him no. What if I don't go home? If I fly to the sea, then what? He looked at her for a long time, and in his eyes, she read all the contempt, irritation, fatigue. Not a drop of love, no shadow of that feeling that once bound them. Then, Ludmila. He pronounced her name as if spitting it out. You will regret it bitterly. I warned you. He turned and walked toward Jana, who was waiting for him with 2 glasses of champagne. When had she managed to get them from the bar? Ludmila stood in the middle of the airport, among hurried people, among announcements about flights, among foreign lives and foreign stories. Her own story seemed to have just ended or begun. She took out her phone. Her hands were trembling, really trembling now. She opened her contacts, found the notary's number, the same one who handled Gennady's business. She knew this number because she herself had written it down once in her husband's agenda. No, she thought. Not now. First something else. She wrote a message. Gennady. When you carried me over the puddle to the dormitory, you said you would protect me all my life. I believed you. For 32 years I believed. Today you called me a ruin in front of everyone, in front of your mistress, in front of strangers. I endured a lot, I forgave, I pretended not to notice. But this is the last straw. Do you want to know where I was headed? To the lawyer. I'm resting a bit, changing the environment, and on the first flight, I'm coming back. Division of property. Gennady. My parents' house, my grandfather's land. Did you forget on whose land you built your palace? I haven't forgotten, and I have the documents kept. That's all. Have a pleasant vacation. She reread the message 3 times. Her finger remained suspended over the send button. 32 years. 2 children. Her whole life. Ludmila pressed the button. Then she walked to the check-in counter, slowly, like in a dream. She handed over her passport and printed ticket, smiled at the girl at the counter, received her boarding pass. She didn't look back, didn't look for Gennady and his blonde. She simply walked forward, for the first time in many years, without looking back. Gennady sat in the business class seat and sipped from a whiskey. Jana, beside him, leafed through a magazine, rarely showing him photos of dresses and jewelry. He nodded without looking. His thoughts were elsewhere. Can you believe it, she came, the old fool. So many years she was silent, endured, pretended not to notice, and now she suddenly woke up. Surely Ekaterina incited her. That girl is always sticking her nose where it doesn't belong. She takes after her mother, just as dense. Let her deal with diapers and not meddle in his business. It's nothing, she'll return, he'll solve it. Maybe it really is time to divorce. Jana is young, beautiful, wants a child. She hinted at it several times. Why not? 57 is not an age. Many at his years start a new life. The phone vibrated in his pocket. Gennady took it out irritably. The plane hadn't taken off yet. He could look. Message from Ludmila. He snorted, opening it. What will she write there? Will she beg? Will she cry? Will she threaten? He began to read. Jana noticed how his face changed. First bewilderment appeared, then confusion. Then the blood drained from his cheeks, and Gennady Petrovich Somov, director of a large construction company, the man competitors feared and partners respected, turned white as lime. Gennady. Jana touched his sleeve. What happened? He didn't answer. He reread the message again and again, and his hands began to tremble. Grandfather's land. The documents. She kept everything. How could he forget? How could he be such an idiot? The house. Yes, he built it with his money. But the land. The land belonged to Ludmila's family since Soviet times. Her grandfather had received the land as a war veteran, then passed it to his daughter, Ludmila's mother, then to Ludmila herself. Officially, with all the papers. When they got married, Gennady didn't even think about it. Big deal, a plot of land. He would build a house on it for his family. What's the big deal? Ludmila is his wife. Everything is common property, but according to the law, the land is hers. And a house on foreign land, what is it? Correct. Nothing. Without land, the house is just a box that can be demolished. He remembered how Ludmila's father, before his death, told him, "Take care of my daughter, Gennady. She gave you everything. Her youth, her love, her life. Don't upset her." The old man died 1 month after that conversation. Gennady had completely forgotten his words. And now, Gennady. Jana's voice became scared. "Are you feeling ill? Should I call a stewardess?" He looked at her, at this young face, at these eyes the color of gooseberries, at those lips swollen with trendy filler, and suddenly saw her as she really was. Not a beauty, not a dream, but simply a young predator who sensed prey and latched on with a deadly grip. Fool, he thought. What a fool I am. The plane began to taxi. The phone automatically switched to airplane mode. Gennady leaned back in the seat and closed his eyes. The vacation promised to be unforgettable. Ludmila sat in the waiting room at another boarding gate. Her flight was in 3 hours. She intentionally took a later one so as not to fly with her husband on the same plane. Although, what kind of husband is he now? She looked out the huge window at the planes taking off and thought about how strangely life is arranged. For 32 years she was afraid. She had been afraid of being left alone, afraid of judgment, afraid of the unknown, afraid to admit that her marriage was an empty shell, that love died long ago, that she lives with a stranger. And now she felt light, so light as she had never felt before. The phone rang. Ekaterina. Mom, how are you? Have you taken off? No, I'm still waiting for the flight. And Dad left with his companion. Pause. Did you talk to him? Yes. And? Ludmila sighed. He called me an old ruin. In front of everyone. In front of her. Ekaterina was silent for a few seconds. Then her voice became hard. I'll kill him. No need. Ludmila smiled suddenly. I'll manage on my own. Mom, I sent him a message about the land. Ekaterina exclaimed. Seriously? Absolutely. Mom. There was something new in the daughter's voice. Respect. Admiration. Mom, you are incredible. I'm just tired, Ekaterina. Very tired. And what are you doing now? Ludmila looked out the window. Another plane was gaining altitude, disappearing into the blue of the sky. Now I'm flying to the sea. For the first time in my life, for myself. And then we'll see. The plane landed at 8 in the evening, local time. Gennady didn't say a word to Jana the entire flight. She tried to talk to him, first playfully, then worried, then offended. He didn't react, sat with his eyes closed and ran through scenarios in his head. Call Ludmila. Useless. She isn't the type to throw words to the wind. If she wrote, it means she decided. Call the lawyer. Possible. He must, but what will he tell him? Gennady knew the answer himself. The land is hers. The house without land is nothing. You can litigate for years, spend money and nerves, but the result will be the same. How could he calculate so wrongly? For 32 years he lived on foreign land and thought it was his. He made plans, invested money, thought himself the master. And in reality, Gennady, Jana's voice pulled him out of his numbness. We've arrived. Are you getting off? He looked at her. Beautiful, young, stupid. How could he think that she would replace Ludmila? But you, Ludmila, his inner voice asked him. You yourself rejected her, yourself called her a ruin, yourself chose this doll. I'm getting off, he mumbled and got up from the chair. At the hotel, a luxury suite with a sea view awaited them. A huge bed, jacuzzi, balcony with white curtains. Jana ran enthusiastically around the room, photographing every corner for her social networks. Look what a sunset, she chirped. Let's go to the beach tomorrow morning. I bought a new swimsuit, I want to show it to you. Gennady stood on the balcony and looked at the sea. The sun was setting, coloring the water in tones of pink and gold. Beautiful. He had dreamed of this vacation for half a year, planned every detail. And here, the dream came true. He is here with a young and beautiful woman in a luxury hotel. And in his soul, there is emptiness and fear. He took out his phone, dialed his son's number. Maxim, it's Dad. Hi, Dad. How was the arrival? Normal. Listen. Gennady fell silent. Did you talk to Mom? Pause. No. Why? Nothing. Just if you talk, tell her. He didn't know what to say. What can he convey through his son? Apologies, threats, please? Dad, what happened? Maxim's voice became tense. Nothing, everything is normal. Talk later. He hung up and stood for a long time looking at the darkening sky. Somewhere there, thousands of kilometers away, his life was collapsing, and he could do nothing. Ludmila arrived late at night. Another flight, another airport, another city on the coast. She had changed her hotel reservation to be far from sin. She intentionally chose a more distant place, didn't want to accidentally meet her husband and his new passion. The hotel was modest, 3 stars. A small room overlooking the inner courtyard, but clean, comfortable, and hers. For the first time in 32 years, she was alone, truly alone. Ludmila sat on the bed and began to cry. She cried a lot, sobbing, as she hadn't cried for many years. Tears flowed down her cheeks, dripped onto her knees, and she didn't wipe them. Let everything come out, all the pain, all the humiliation, all the years of silence and patience. Old ruin. These words burned her inside. Not because they were true, she knew it wasn't so, but because they were spoken by the man who swore to love her until the end of life. The man for whom she gave up her career, the dream of studying further, herself. She remembered how she dreamed of becoming an economist, entering the institute, receiving her diploma, working in a big company. Teachers told her, "You have a talent for numbers, Ludmila, you will go far." Then Gennady appeared, the wedding, the pregnancy, maternity leave, then the second child. Then she had to work, money was needed. What studies? Then it was too late. And here she is, 54 years old, an accountant at a factory, the wife, former wife, of a successful businessman, mother of 2 adult children and no one else. The phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Ludmila Sergeevna? A male voice. It's Victor Andreevsky, the notary. Ekaterina gave me your number. Ludmila wiped her tears. How could he guess that she herself wanted to call him? Something mystical, nothing else. Yes, I'm listening. Ekaterina asked me to contact you urgently. She said you are planning a divorce. Ludmila swallowed hard. Yes, I plan to. I understand. I worked with your family for many years, managed your husband's business, but now. He fell silent. Now I would like to offer my services to you, if you are not against it. Why? Because I know the situation from the inside. I know that that house is built on land that belongs to you by inheritance. I know that your husband had, let's say, not entirely clean dealings. And I know that you have every chance to receive what is due to you. Ludmila was silent. Her heart was beating somewhere in her throat. She hoped she knew, but to hear this from the mouth of a professional was worth a lot. Not entirely clean dealings, she asked eventually. Not a discussion for the phone, but, believe me, you have a strong position, very strong. Your husband knows this. That is exactly why he. The notary snorted. Let's say, he doesn't feel too well right now. His partner called me, asked what is happening. Probably Gennady Petrovsky is trying to find a way out of the situation. And what did you tell him? That there is no way out. The law is on your side. Ludmila Sergeevna, for the first time in 32 years, the law is on your side. Ludmila hung up and sat motionless for a long time. Outside, sunrise was beginning. The sky was brightening, coloring in pink and blue. A new day. A new life. She got up, washed her face with cold water, looked in the mirror. Eyes swollen from crying, pale face, grey strands in her disheveled hair. Ruin, Gennady had said. No, she said to her reflection out loud. I am not a ruin. I am a woman who has finally woken up. She put on that bright sarafan that had stayed in the closet for 5 years. She tied her hair in a ponytail, put lipstick on her lips for the first time in a long time, and went to meet the sunrise at the sea. The beach was almost deserted at that early hour. Just a few fishermen in the distance and a lone runner at the water's edge. Ludmila took off her sandals and stepped on the sand. Warm, soft, caressing. The sea. She hadn't seen the sea for 15 years. The last time they went with the whole family, when the children were 16 and 12 years old. Gennady then was not yet. No, not the one from the old days. The one from the old days had ended much earlier, but at least he was tolerable. She entered the water up to her ankles, then up to her knees, then up to her waist. The waves rocked her gently, and she closed her eyes, exposing her face to the sun. I am free, she thought. For the first time in her life, free. Attention! Someone shouted. There is a current there. Ludmila opened her eyes. Swimming toward her was a man, that runner from the shore, grey-haired, tanned, with gentle wrinkles at his eyes. Thank you, she said when he approached. I didn't know. First time here. Yes, first time. She fell silent. Everywhere is a first time. He looked at her carefully, as if seeing something beyond her words. Then he smiled. Then, welcome. My name is Pavel. Ludmila. Beautiful name. Dear to people. She laughed unexpectedly to herself. When had she last laughed? That's what my mother called me. A long time ago. Very long ago. Pavel nodded, still smiling. Come, I'll show you a safe place for bathing. There is a small cove here. The water is like milk and there is no current. Ludmila looked at this stranger, at his open face, at the outstretched hand, and understood suddenly that she wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't afraid of anything. Let's go, she said and took his hand. The cove Pavel spoke about turned out to be a small paradise. Rocks protected it from wind and currents. The water was transparent to the bottom, and the sand white and fine as flour. I come here every morning, Pavel said, sitting on a warm stone. Already for 3 years. The locals don't know about this place, and tourists don't reach here. It's far from the hotels. Do you live here? Ludmila asked, sitting down nearby. Now yes. Before I lived in a big city, worked as an engineer at a plant. Then. He fell silent. Then life changed. Ludmila didn't start asking. She understood. Everyone has their story, their wounds. You don't always want to talk about them. They sat in silence, listening to the noise of the waves. The sun rose higher, it was getting warm. Ludmila took off her sarafan, remaining in her swimsuit, that old one she had found in the closet. She expected Pavel to look at her evaluatively, as Gennady looked, with contempt, with disappointment. But he simply smiled. Let's swim. The water is ideal now. They swam a lot, like children. They splashed, dived, laughed. Ludmila no longer remembered when she last felt so light. So alive. Tell me about yourself, Pavel asked when they came out to the shore and lay on the hot sand. Where are you from? Why did you come? And Ludmila told him everything, about the 32 years of marriage, about the children, about Jana, about the words at the airport, about the message she sent to her husband. Pavel listened silently, without interrupting. When she finished, he looked at the sea for a long time, then said, "Do you know what is most terrible in long marriages? We stop seeing each other, we live side by side, but look through the other, and one day we wake up next to a stranger. Was it like that for you too?" "Yes." He nodded. "My wife, former wife, left 5 years ago for my friend. They now live in my apartment, raise his children. And I am here. I'm sorry." "No need." Pavel turned to her and smiled. "It's the best thing that happened to me. I lost everything and found myself." Sounds like cheap psychology, but it's true. Ludmila looked at this man, at his calm face, at the eyes in which there was neither bitterness nor malice, and thought, is it possible like this? Can you get over betrayal and not break? Not become bitter? "How did you manage?" she asked quietly. "Time, the sea, solitude." He shrugged. "And the understanding that I am not guilty. That her choice is her choice. I couldn't change it. I could only decide how to live my life further." Ludmila's phone rang, destroying the moment. She looked at the screen. Maxim. "Excuse me," she told Pavel and stepped aside. "Yes, son." "Mom, what is happening?" Maxim's voice was tense. "Dad called me, said that you went crazy, that you want to take his house?" "Not take, recover what is mine." "Mom, but it's our house. I grew up there." "You grew up on my grandfather's land, Maxim. Land that your father never considered necessary to transfer to his name because he was sure that I wouldn't go anywhere." Pause. "Mom." The son's voice trembled. "Do you really want a divorce?" Ludmila closed her eyes. Before her appeared the face of small Maxim, 5 years old, with a scraped knee. "Mommy, blow on it so it doesn't hurt." She blew, kissed him, put on a band-aid, was always there. And now he asks her how she dared. "Yes," she said firmly. "I want to." "But why? For so many years everything was normal." "Normal." Ludmila laughed bitterly. "For whom, Maxim?" "For you, for Dad. Do you know when your father last told me he loves me? Do you know when he last looked at me as a woman, and not as a servant?" Maxim was silent. "Yesterday at the airport he called me an old ruin," Ludmila continued. "In front of everyone, in front of his mistress. Do you know what I felt? Nothing. Empty, because I had died long ago inside. And now I'm waking up. And it hurts, son. It hurts very much. But this is a living pain. It means I am still alive. Mom." Maxim sighed. An adult man, of 31 years, sighed like a child. "Mom, forgive me. I didn't know. I thought." "You thought what was comfortable to think. That everything is fine with the parents, that mom is happy, that dad simply works a lot. And I myself believed that. For 32 years I believed." She heard Maxim breathing heavily in the receiver. Then he said quietly, brokenly, "What should I do?" "Live, son. Simply live and don't repeat your father's mistakes." She hung up and stood motionless for a while, looking at the sea. Tears flowed down her cheeks again, but now they were other tears, cleansing ones. "Is everything all right?" Pavel approached and stood next to her. "No," Ludmila answered honestly. "But it will be." Gennady paced the room like a beast in a cage. Jana sat on the bed, legs tucked under her, and looked at him with frightened eyes. "Gennady, explain to me finally what happened. You've been out of sorts all day." He stopped, looked at her and suddenly burst out. "What happened? Do you want to know what happened? My wife, my lawful wife, plans to take everything from me. The house, the land, the money. For 32 years I built, worked, slaved away, and now this. He didn't finish, choking with rage. But how? Jana blinked often. You just said it's your house. The house is mine, but the land is hers, do you understand? Without land, the house is nothing. She can force me to demolish it or buy the land for heavy money. Or. He sat on the edge of the bed and held his head in his hands. I am an idiot, he whispered. What an idiot I am. Jana was silent. Inside her head something clicked, like a calculator calculating new data. Rich lover who can lose everything. Divorce. Division. What will remain for her? Gennady, she touched his shoulder cautiously. Maybe talk to her? Apologize. Apologize. He raised his head, and Jana avoided his gaze. For what? Because she sat on my back for 32 years? Because I fed her, clothed her, provided for her. But you yourself say, the land is hers. Shut up, he roared. Just shut up. Jana fell silent. She looked at this man, at his trembling hands, at his purple face, at the vein beating at his temple, and thought, God, what have I gotten myself into? For 3 years she was by his side. For 3 years she listened to his complaints about his wife, the grey mouse, the bore, the burden. For 3 years she believed that one day he would divorce and marry her, that she would become the mistress of that huge house he showed her in photos, that her life would change. And now the grey mouse showed her fangs, and it turned out she has sharp fangs. I want to go home, Jana said suddenly. Gennady stared at her. What? Home? I want to fly today. Have you gone crazy? We barely arrived. Jana got up from the bed and began to gather her things. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was firm. Gennady, I didn't sign up for this. For scandals, for settling scores with the wife, for lawsuits. I thought we would have a beautiful vacation. But you don't even look at the sea, you just yell and get angry. Jana. No. She raised her hand. No need. I understood everything. As long as you had money and status, I was necessary, and now when everything is collapsing. She laughed bitterly. Do you know what is funniest? Your wife turned out to be smarter than both of us. Jana left on the first morning flight. Gennady didn't even go to see her off. He stood on the balcony, looking at the sea with empty eyes. Somewhere inside him something broke. Not his heart, he had lost his heart long ago. Something different. Confidence, the feeling of control over life. For 57 years he built his empire. He started from zero, a simple site manager. He worked 16 hours a day. He snatched every contract, every deal with his teeth. And here, house, company, money, respect. Everything he dreamed of. And now, a single message from his wife and everything collapses like a house of cards. He took out his phone, reread Ludmila's message for the 100th time. My parents' house, my grandfather's land. How could he forget? How could he be so confident? Then, 32 years ago, when they had just married, his father-in-law proposed building a house on their land. There is plenty of land, he said. Build, live, raise children. Gennady agreed. How could he not? Free land in a good place. He didn't even think about documents, about ownership rights. Why? Ludmila is his wife. Everything is common. Then the father-in-law died. Then the mother-in-law. Ludmila inherited. He himself took her to the notary, himself waited in the car while she perfected the documents. And never did he think that these papers could turn against him. The phone rang. His partner's number, Vadim. Yes, Gennady, what is happening? Victor Andreevsky called me. Says Ludmila is filing divorce papers. She is filing, Gennady mumbled. And what about the land? Is it true? Gennady was silent. What else to say? Gennady. Vadim's voice became hard. If it's true, we have problems. Big problems. The house is mortgaged to the bank for the credit on the new objective. If the land isn't yours. I know. Gennady roared. Do you think I don't know? And what do you intend to do? He didn't know. For the first time in his life, he didn't know. I'm coming to sort it out. Come by plane today, Vadim cut him short. The matter is serious. The bank is already asking. Gennady hung up the phone and stood motionless for a long time. Then he got up and began to gather his things. The vacation ended without managing to begin. Ludmila had spent 3 days at the sea. 3 days that changed her more than 32 years of marriage. Every morning she came to that small cove, and every morning Pavel was there. They swam, talked, were silent together. He told her about his life, about his work as an engineer, about the wife who left, about the son who chose his mother and stopped communicating, about how he sold everything and moved here to the sea to start from scratch. Do you not regret? Ludmila asked one day. What exactly? The life from before. Career, family. Pavel was silent for a long time, looking toward the horizon. I regret regarding my son, he said finally. Every day I regret. He was 15 years old when we divorced. He didn't understand. He decided that I abandoned them, but I simply couldn't live in a lie anymore. Did you try to talk to him? Many times. He doesn't want to listen. Pavel smiled sadly. Maybe someday, when he matures, when he hits life himself. Ludmila thought about her children. About Ekaterina, who had always been on her side, about Maxim, who chose his father, consciously or not. What will happen now? Will she lose her son, just as Pavel lost his? On the 3rd day, Ekaterina called. Mom, you need to return urgently. What happened? Dad arrived by plane. Ekaterina stumbled. He's at the hospital. Ludmila's heart plummeted. What is wrong with him? Heart attack. Right at the airport. They took him by ambulance. Ludmila sank down onto the sand. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Pavel appeared instantly beside her, supported her, helped her sit. Is he alive? She whispered. He's alive, in intensive care. The doctors say the condition is serious, but stable. Ekaterina fell silent. Mom, I know what you feel now, but he is still Dad. My father. Maxim's father. I'm taking the first flight, Ludmila said and hung up. She sat on the sand and tears flowed down her cheeks. Not from pain, but from confusion. She had hated this man, hated him for the humiliation, for the betrayals, for the stolen life. And at the same time, he was the man with whom she lived 32 years. The father of her children. Once, her love. Ludmila. Pavel sat down next to her. What happened? She told him. Tangled, confused. He listened in silence. You need to fly, he said when she finished. Yes. Do you want me to help with tickets? She looked at him, at this man whom she had known for only 3 days, but who had managed to become closer to her than her husband in 32 years. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why are you helping me? Pavel smiled gently, warmly. Because, once no one helped me. I know what it's like to be alone in a difficult moment. The plane landed late in the evening. Ekaterina was waiting for her at the airport, pale, with eyes red from crying. How is he? Was the first thing Ludmila asked. They transferred him from intensive care. The doctors say he's past the crisis. But Catherine fell silent. Is he asking about you? He asks all the time. Ludmila closed her eyes. For 32 years, he hadn't asked. For 32 years she had been furniture, a function, an empty space. And now, when death had breathed in his face, he remembered. Where is Maxim? At the hospital, he's on duty in the ward. They were walking through the nocturnal city, and Ludmila looked out the window at the passing lights. Everything was familiar and foreign at the same time. This city, these streets, this life, everything belonged to the Ludmila from before. The woman who endured and stayed silent, who was afraid. But who is she now? The hospital greeted them with the smell of medicine and the silence of night corridors. Maxim was standing near the ward, his face drawn, with dark circles under his eyes. Seeing his mother, he jumped to his feet. "Mom!" She hugged him tightly, just as she used to hug him in childhood. He buried his face in her shoulder and began to tremble. "Mom, forgive me," he whispered. "Forgive me, I didn't know." "Hush." She stroked his head. "Hush, son, everything is fine." "He almost died," sighed Maxim right before her eyes. "He fell. And I thought that was it. I thought I was losing him and I understood." Maxim raised his head. Tears shone in his eyes. "I understood that I could have lost you both. Him because of the heart attack. You because of the fact that I was a blind idiot. Mom, I don't want to choose. I don't want you to be." "Maxim." Ludmila took his face in her hands. "I am not asking you to choose. I never asked. He is your father. That won't change, whatever happens between us." The ward door opened. A nurse came out. "Are you Ludmila Sergeyevna? He is calling for you." Ludmila looked at the door. Behind it lay the man who had called her a ruin, who had humiliated her in front of everyone, who for 32 years had received her love as something he was entitled to. And yet he was the man with whom she had shared a bed, raised children, built a life. The man she had once loved so much that she thought she would die without him. She pushed the door and entered. Gennady was lying in bed, wrapped in wires and tubes. Without his expensive suits, without his boss posture, he seemed small, pitiful, old. Seeing his wife, he tried to rise, but couldn't. "Ludmila," he wheezed. She approached and sat on the chair next to the bed. She waited in silence. "Ludmila, forgive me." His voice was weak, cracked. "Forgive me for everything." Ludmila looked at him and felt nothing. Neither anger, nor pity, nor triumph. Only emptiness. "For what exactly, Gennady?" she asked quietly. "For the old ruin. For Jana. For 30 years of humiliation?" He closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. The first tear she had seen from him in all these years. "For everything. Because I forgot. I forgot what you are truly like. I forgot why I married you. I forgot myself." Ludmila remained silent. Her husband's words were correct, necessary. But did she believe them? "When I fell at the airport," Gennady continued, "when I understood that I was dying, do you know what I thought about? Not about money, not about the house. About you. About that day when I carried you in my arms through the puddle. You were laughing and I was thinking, I will never let her go. I will never let her leave." Ludmila felt something tremble inside. A small crack in the wall she had built around herself. "And then you let me go," she whispered. "Yes." He opened his eyes. "I let you go and I lost you." They sat in silence. Beyond the window, it was getting light. The night had passed unnoticed in discussions and silences. Gennady told his story confusedly, with pauses when he ran out of air. About how it all started with Jana, about how he convinced himself he had the right, that he deserved it, that Ludmila wouldn't notice anyway. "I thought you had resigned yourself," he said. "I thought you were indifferent. I never made a scene, I never asked for explanations. I simply lived as if you didn't exist, because I was afraid," Ludmila replied quietly. "I was afraid of losing the family, afraid of remaining alone, afraid to admit that everything was over. And now I am no longer afraid." Gennady closed his eyes. The machine next to him beeped rhythmically, counting his heartbeats. "You will leave," he said. "It's not a question, it's a statement. Yes. And you will take everything." Ludmila was silent. 3 days ago she would have been ready. Ready to take the house, the land, the money, everything that could be taken. to take revenge for the years of humiliation, to make him feel what she had felt. But now, looking at this broken man, she understood. Revenge would not bring her happiness, only desolation. "I will take what is mine," she said finally. "The land. It is the inheritance of my parents, of my grandfather. I won't give it to strangers. And the house. The house." She sighed. "You can keep the house. You will buy the land from me at market price." "I don't care." Gennady opened his eyes. There was something new in them. Amazement. Gratitude. "Why?" he whispered. "Why don't you want to destroy me after everything I've done?" Ludmila stood up, approached the window. The sun was rising over the city, flooding the roofs with a golden light. A new day, a new life. "Because I am tired of hating Gennady," she said without turning around. 32 years I lived your life, your goals, your dreams, and now I want to live mine. And in this life, there is no room for hatred. It takes too much strength from me." She heard him sigh and turned around. Gennady was crying soundlessly, the way men cry who have forgotten how to do it. "I loved you," he said through tears. "Truly, I loved you once long ago. That girl with the braid down to her waist, who laughed until her heart stopped. Where did she disappear to, Ludmila? Where did we both disappear?" "We got lost," she replied quietly. "We got lost along the way. You in the chase for money and power. Me in fear and silence. We are both guilty and nothing can be fixed now." Ludmila approached the bed, looked at the man who had once been her universe, at the grey temples, at the wrinkles, at the hands, the same hands that had once carried her through the puddle. "Fix it?" "No," she said. "But starting over is possible. Just not together. Separately." She leaned down and kissed him on the forehead, lightly, almost weightlessly. A farewell kiss. "Get well soon, Gennady. Live and try not to lose those who love you again." She left the ward without looking back. 1 week after her return passed in a fog. Ludmila busied herself with documents, met with the lawyer, spoke with the children. Catherine was by her side, supported her, helped her, argued with officials. Maxim came every evening, guilty, confused, trying to understand his new role in the broken family. Gennady was recovering. The doctor said, he was lucky, another half an hour and they wouldn't have saved him. He called Ludmila every day. He didn't ask her to come back, didn't threaten, simply talked, as if learning to communicate again with the woman he had known for 32 years. One evening, an unknown number rang. Ludmila answered automatically. "Hello, Ludmila Sergeyevna?" A woman's voice, young, trembling. I am Jana." Ludmila froze. This was the call she expected least. "I'm listening. I wanted to apologize." Jana's voice was breaking. "For everything. For him, for us." "Why are you calling?" Pause. Then a sigh. "Because I can't stay silent anymore. I am 27 years old, but I feel like an old woman. For 3 years I was with your husband. For 3 years I lied to myself that he loved me, that he would leave you and marry me. And then I saw how he looked at you at the airport, when he said those words. And I understood. I understood that he didn't hate you, but himself, because he allowed all this to happen, because he lost the real you. And he didn't notice me. I was." She sighed again. "I was just a way not to think about it." Ludmila listened and felt something changing inside. She had hated this woman, the destroyer of families, the thief of another's happiness. And now she heard in her voice the same pain, the same despair she knew herself. "Jana," she said slowly, "you are 27 years old. Your whole life is ahead. Don't waste it on other people's husbands. Find your own, the one who will look at you the way Gennady once looked at me, before he ruined everything. Do you forgive me?" "I don't know," Ludmila answered honestly. "For now I don't know, but I don't want to be angry at you anymore. I'm tired of being angry." She hung up and sat for a long time in the dark, looking at the phone screen. Then she opened her contacts and found the number she had saved a few days ago. Pavel Golf. She wrote a message. I am home. Everything is complicated, but I am managing. Thank you for the C, for the conversations, for showing me that it is possible to start over. The answer came in a minute. I am glad you are managing. The C awaits you. And so do I. Ludmila smiled for the first time in this endless week. The divorce was pronounced 3 months later. No scandals, no courts, no war. Gennady bought the land at market price. The sum turned out to be huge. But he didn't bargain. Ludmila received the money, half of the jointly acquired assets, and her freedom. The children perceived the divorce differently. Catherine celebrated, organized a party for her mother, gifted her a vacation at the sea. Maxim was silent, suffered, but gradually resigned himself. He started calling his mother more often, visiting, talking for real, in a way he never had before. Gennady was discharged from the hospital after 1 month. Weak, aged, but alive. He had to sell the company. The bank demanded early repayment of the loan, and the money left after paying Ludmila wasn't enough. He moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, got a job as a consultant at a construction firm owned by a former competitor. He resigned himself. One day he called Ludmila not for business, but simply to talk. How are you? He asked. Good, she replied. And it was true. I'm glad. Pause. Then he said quietly, as if afraid to scare her, Ludmila, I found those poems, remember, the ones I used to read to you in the dorm? It turns out I messed everything up. There were completely different verses there. She laughed unexpectedly to herself. I knew. I always knew you mixed them up. Why didn't you tell me? Because I loved you even with the mixed-up verses. Silence. Then his voice cracked. And now? Ludmila looked out the window. Outside it was spring, the first spring of her new life. Trees were blooming, birds were singing, and the air smelled of something fresh, new, unknown. Now no, she said gently. But I am grateful to you for the children, for those first years when we were happy, for the lesson you taught me. What lesson? That it is never too late to start over. Ludmila returned to the sea at the end of May, exactly 1 year after that day at the airport. The same small town, the same modest hotel, the same bay behind the rocks. Only she herself was different. In this year, much had changed. She had resigned from the factory where she had worked for almost 3 decades. She had enrolled in landscape design courses, fulfilling a dream she had forgotten many years ago. It turned out she had a talent for it. Teachers praised her, classmates, young girls who could be her daughters, asked her for advice. She had lost 7 kilograms, let her hair grow, stopped dyeing it. The gray turned out to be beautiful, silver, noble. Mom, you're like an actress from French movies, Catherine said when she saw her new haircut. But the main change was inside. Ludmila had learned to wake up with a smile on her lips, learned to look in the mirror without disgust, learned to say no and not feel guilty. She learned to say yes to herself, to her desires, to her life. Pavel was waiting for her on the beach. She recognized him from afar by his silhouette, by his walk, by how he stood near the water, looking at the horizon. Her heart began to beat faster, like a girl's before her first date. They had written to each other all year. At first rarely, once a week, then more often. He told her about the sea, about sunsets, about the books he was reading. She, about courses, about children, about her new life. Gradually, these messages became important, necessary for her. She fell asleep with the phone in her hand, rereading his words. Ludmila. He turned, seeing her, and smiled. You came. I came. They stood facing each other, not young with wrinkles and gray hairs, with the burden of years lived behind them, and looked at each other as the first lovers once did. I missed you, said Pavel. Simply. Me too. He reached out his hand. She took it and felt something click into place. a puzzle piece that had been missing all her life. They spent 1 week together. They walked on the embankment, swam in the bay, dined in small cafes overlooking the sea, talked for hours about everything and nothing. They were silent together, and this silence was comfortable, warm. On the 3rd day, he kissed her, tenderly, cautiously, as if afraid to scare her. Ludmila didn't pull back, closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel, for the first time in many years. "I don't want to rush you," said Pavel, pulling away. "I don't want to pressure you. I just had to do that. For a whole year, I dreamed. A whole year." She smiled. "From the moment I saw you in the water. You were standing with your eyes closed, facing the sun. And I thought, there she is. The woman I have waited for all my life." Ludmila felt tears rising in her eyes. But they were good tears, tears of happiness. "I am 54 years old, Pavel," she whispered. "I am old, divorced, with a bunch of baggage behind me. Why do you need this?" He took her face in his hands, carefully, like something fragile and precious. "You are 54 years old," he repeated. "You are wonderful, strong, alive, and you have a whole life ahead. Our life if you want it." She wanted it. God, how much she wanted it. In the evening she called Catherine. "Mom, why are you so happy?" asked her daughter, hearing her voice. "Catherine, I have to tell you something." "You're in love." Catherine screamed so loud that Ludmila pulled the phone away from her ear. "I knew it, I felt it. Is it that man from the sea? How do you know?" "Mom, every evening you smiled at the phone. Do you think I'm blind?" Ludmila laughed. Her daughter, smart, perceptive, loving. How did such a wonderful girl grow up? "Yes, it's him. His name is Pavel. He is 58 years old. He—" "Mom," interrupted Catherine. "I don't need his biography. I need to know only one thing. Are you happy?" Ludmila looked at the sea from the window, the sunset coloring the sky in unimaginable colors, the world that had suddenly become so huge and beautiful. "Yes," she said. "Happy. Then the rest doesn't matter." Maxim reacted more complicatedly. He was silent for a long time when she told him about Pavel. Then he asked, "But what about Dad?" "Your father," said Ludmila gently. "He is still your father. That doesn't change. But he is no longer my husband, and I have the right to happiness." Maxim sighed. "I know, Mom, it's just hard to get used to the fact that you are now separate, that you have different lives. That means maturing, son. To understand that parents are also people, with their dreams, their mistakes, the right to a second chance." "Is he a good man, this Pavel?" "Yes," answered Ludmila without hesitation. "Very good." Silence. Then Maxim's voice, quiet but firm. "Then I am happy for you, Mom. I really am happy." 2 years passed. 2 years that Ludmila called in her mind, real life. Unlike the 32 that had been before. She moved to the sea. Not immediately. First, she came for 1 month, then for 2, then she understood that she didn't want to go back anymore. She sold her share of the apartment in the city to Gennady, bought a small house on the edge of the seaside town, with a garden she designed herself, with a porch where she drank coffee with Pavel in the morning, overlooking the sea, not directly, but if you stood on tiptoes on the 2nd floor, you could see the blue strip on the horizon. Pavel moved in with her after half a year. They didn't get married officially. Both decided that the stamp in the passport didn't matter at their age. Something else was more important. Waking up next to each other, having breakfast together, knowing that in the evening there would be someone to tell about the day that passed. Ludmila opened her own business, a small landscape design studio. Clients appeared on their own, first neighbors, then their acquaintances, then owners of hotels and restaurants. Her works were photographed for local magazines. Ludmila's gardens, that's what they called her projects. Catherine came every summer with her husband and daughter. Little Paulina adored her grandmother and the sea, and her grandmother adored her. Ludmila taught her granddaughter to swim in the same bay where Pavel had once saved her from the current. The circle closed, but it was a good, correct circle. Maxim came less often, but called every week. He had married 1 year ago to a quiet girl, Nina, a programmer like him. Ludmila was at the wedding, and Gennady too. They sat at different tables, but didn't act like enemies. Time had healed the wounds, leaving only a scar, a memory of the past, but not pain. Everything was good. Too good, Ludmila sometimes thought. It can't be like this. Life cannot be so generous, especially after so many years of stinginess. She was right. The call rang at 3 in the morning. Ludmila grabbed the phone, not yet fully awake. On the screen, Catherine's name. Catherine, what happened? Mom. Her daughter's voice was strange, dull, as if coming from underwater. Mom, Dad. His heart stopped. Then it started beating again, madly. Sick. What's wrong with him? Stroke. Massive. He is in a coma. Mom. The doctors say. Catherine sighed. The doctors say there are almost no chances. Ludmila sat on the bed. Pavel woke up, turned on the light, took her hand. She didn't feel his touch, felt nothing, only the cold spreading through her body. I'm taking the first flight, she said. Mom, you don't have to, you aren't obligated. After everything. I'm taking the first flight, repeated Ludmila firmly. He is the father of my children. I must be there. Pavel got up in silence and began to pack her things. He understood. In the 2 years together, he had learned to understand her without words. Gennady lay in intensive care, small, shriveled, unrecognizable. Next to him machines beeped, lights blinked, nurses bustled. Maxim stood at the door with the same expression on his face as 2 years ago, when his father had suffered the heart attack. Only now in his eyes there was no hope, but despair. Mom. He jumped when he saw her. You came. Of course I came. She hugged her son, then Catherine, who ran from the corridor hearing her voice. The 3 of them stood, hugging, as they once stood long ago, when they were a family. What do the doctors say? Asked Ludmila. They say to wait. Maxim lowered his head. The damage is extensive. If he survives, he will remain paralyzed. Maybe he won't speak. Maybe he won't recognize us. Maybe, repeated Ludmila. But it's not certain. Mom, you understand too. I understand that doctors are not gods. I understand that miracles happen. I understand that we must fight until the end. She said these words and she didn't believe in them herself. But the children looked at her with hope, and she couldn't disappoint them. They let her into the ward for 5 minutes. Ludmila stood by the bed of the man who had once been her husband and didn't recognize him. Where had the authoritarian and self-assured Gennady Petrovich disappeared to? Where was the man who had called her a ruin at the airport? Before her lay a shell. Empty, fragile. Gennady, she whispered. Gennady, do you hear me? No reaction, only the beeping of machines. Ludmila took his hand, cold, devoid of will. She remembered how this hand had once hugged her, how it had held the newborn Maxim, how it had built that house on her grandfather's land. You were a bad husband, she said quietly. Selfish. Traitor. You destroyed my life. But you know something? I am grateful to you. Without you, Catherine and Maxim wouldn't exist. Paulina wouldn't exist. That me, who stands here now, wouldn't exist. You forced me to become strong, you taught me to fight, you showed me what I am actually worth. She leaned down and kissed him on the forehead, just like back then in the hospital, after the heart attack. A farewell kiss. Fight. Gennady. You have children who love you. A granddaughter to whom you promised to show how to build sandcastles. You have a life you haven't lived yet. Don't give up. A finger on his hand twitched. Ludmila froze. Did she imagine it? No. There, once more. A weak movement, barely visible. Gennady. She squeezed his hand. Do you hear me? His eyelids trembled. They didn't open, just trembled. But it was something. The first sign of life. Ludmila ran from the ward. Doctor, she shouted. Call the doctor. He's reacting. Gennady woke up after 1 week. Not immediately, gradually, step by step. First he opened his eyes, then he started to track movements, then he squeezed Maxim's hand, weakly, but consciously. The doctors shrugged. They couldn't explain this recovery. They said, rare cases. Exception to the rule. Miracle. Ludmila didn't believe in miracles. She believed in the will to live, in the love of children, in the fact that a person is capable of the impossible when they have something to live for. She remained in the city for 1 month, until Gennady began to speak, slowly, with difficulty, mixing up words, until he began to move his right hand, until the doctors said, the worst has passed. Then she returned home, to Povel, to the sea, to her new life. But now this life had become fuller. In it there was room not only for happiness, but also for forgiveness. Not only for love, but also for memory. 5 years have already passed. 5 years since that day at the airport, when Gennady called her an old ruin. 5 years. A whole life. Several lives. Ludmila sat on the porch of her house and watched the sunset. The sun was going down into the sea, coloring the sky in colors for which she still didn't know the names. Pink, golden, purple, everything together and something more. Behind her, voices could be heard. Catherine was setting the table in the garden, arguing with her husband about where to put the salad bowl. Paulina, already 6 years old, with pigtails and perpetually skinned knees, was running among the trees, chasing the cat. Maxim and Nina were sitting on the swing that Povel had crafted last summer. Nina was pregnant, the 7th month. A little boy. They had decided to name him Sergei, in honor of Ludmila's father. Grandma. Paulina ran and hugged her legs. Grandma, but when is Grandpa Gennady coming? He promised to show me how to build castles. Ludmila smiled and stroked her granddaughter's head. Soon. Sunshine. Grandpa Povel went to meet him. Yes, Gennady was coming too. For the first time in 5 years here, in her house, to her new family. It was strange and right at the same time. After the stroke, he hadn't fully recovered. His left hand almost didn't work, speech came to him with difficulty, he walked with a cane. But he was alive, he was with his children and granddaughter. He had learned to rejoice in the little things, in what he had until recently taken for granted. He and Ludmila now spoke often on the phone, sometimes by video call, not as ex-spouses, but as old friends who have been through a lot. He told her about his days, about the books he had started reading, about the birds he fed on the balcony. She listened and marveled at how a man can change so much. You know, he said once, only now have I understood what time is. Before I thought it was what you have to spend on work, on money, on success. But it turned out that time must be spent on people, on those you love. On nothing else. Better late than never, she answered him. Yes. Better late. The car stopped at the gate. Povel got out first, went around the hood, opened the passenger door, helped Gennady get out. Slowly, carefully. 2 men who could have been enemies, but became, who? Not friends, but something close. Ludmila watched them from the garden. Povel, tall, tanned, with grey hair that suited him well. Gennady, stooped, leaning on a cane, but smiling. He smiled often now. He had learned after the stroke, as if the illness had taken out of him all the malice, all the arrogance. Grandpa Gennady. Paulina threw herself at him, and Ludmila froze in fear, lest she knock him off his feet. But Gennady held his ground, hugged his granddaughter with his healthy hand. My princess, he whispered. How you've grown. Catherine approached, kissed her father on the cheek. Maxim hugged him tight, long. Nina greeted him, and Gennady touched her belly with a trembling hand. Grandson, he said, and his voice broke. I waited. Ludmila stood aside and watched this scene. Her former husband surrounded by their common children. Her new man beside her, calm and reliable. The granddaughter who loves both grandfathers equally. A strange, patched-up family, but real. Pavel approached her, took her hand. How are you? Good. She smiled. Very good. The dinner turned out noisy, chaotic, happy. Everyone spoke at the same time, interrupting each other. Catherine told about her work. She had opened a children's clothing store. Business was going well. Maxim boasted about his new project. His program had been bought by a large international company. Paulina demanded attention, showed her drawings, sang songs from cartoons. Gennady was silent, but his silence was different. Not heavy, as before, but warm. He looked at his children, at his granddaughter, at his ex-wife, and in his eyes was something Ludmila hadn't seen in 32 years of marriage. Gratitude. After dinner, the men remained on the porch. Pavel brought cognac. He poured Gennady very little. The doctors allowed him a bit. The women were clearing the table. Paulina had fallen asleep on the sofa, curled up. Mom. Catherine approached Ludmila, hugged her from behind. Are you happy? Yes. Ludmila covered her daughter's hands with hers. Yes, Catherine, I am happy. I'm glad. You deserved it. We all deserved it. And your father too. Catherine fell silent. I hated him for a long time, she said quietly. For what he did to you. For those words at the airport. For everything. And now. Catherine sighed. Now I understand that hatred is poison. It poisons the one who hates, not the one who is hated. You taught me that, Mom. When you forgave him. I didn't forgive him. Ludmila turned to her daughter. I let him go. Those are different things. To forgive means to forget. And I haven't forgotten. I remember everything. The pain, and the humiliation, and the tears. But I decided not to carry that with me. I left it in the past. That's where it belongs. Catherine nodded. Tears shone in her eyes. You are the strongest woman I know, she whispered. No, smiled Ludmila. Just the most stubborn. Late in the evening, when everyone had retired to their rooms, Ludmila went out into the garden. The night was warm, starry. The sea roared somewhere in the distance, a familiar, soothing sound. She heard steps, turned around. Gennady stood in the doorway, without his cane, holding on to the doorframe. You can't sleep, he said. Neither can you. He approached slowly, sat on the bench next to her. They were silent for a long time, but this silence wasn't heavy. Ludmila, he spoke finally. I want to tell you something. I've wanted to for a long time, but I couldn't find the words. Say it. Thank you. She looked at him in surprise. For what? For everything. For the children. For the years you gave me. For coming to the hospital when I was dying. For not letting me give up. He swallowed hard. And for letting me go. It was the most correct thing you could have done. Ludmila was silent. Gennady's words fell into the silence of the night like stones into water. Heavy, deep. I wasted my life on nonsense, he continued. On money, on status, on that fool Jana. And the truth was nearby. You, the children. I didn't see, I didn't want to see. But now you see. Yes, now I see. He turned to her. In the moonlight, his face seemed almost young, like back then, 30-something years ago. Are you happy with him? With Pavel? Yes. He is a good man. Yes. Better than me. Ludmila didn't contradict him. It was the truth. We both changed, Gennady, she said gently. We both became different. Maybe that's the meaning of it all. To change, to grow, to learn. Until the end. He nodded, then suddenly took her hand, clumsily with his healthy hand, and squeezed it. I loved you, he said. Truly, I loved you. Back then, at the beginning. I want you to know that. I know, she replied. And I loved you. And now. Ludmila looked at the sky scattered with stars, the sea glistening in the distance, the house where her children and granddaughter were sleeping. Now I love life, she said. My life. The one I built myself. And I wish the same for you. Gennady smiled sadly, serenely. Did you find your sea after all, Ludmila? He whispered, calling her by that name he hadn't pronounced for decades. I found it, she agreed. I finally found it. The next morning Ludmila woke up early, slipped out of bed trying not to wake Pavel, put on her robe and went out onto the porch. The sun was rising above the sea. A new day. Another day of her new, true life. She was 59 years old. Behind her, 32 years of unhappy marriage. Divorce, pain, loss. Ahead, the unknown. How much did she have left? 10 years, 25? But now, on this morning, looking at the rising sun, she didn't think about time, didn't think about the past or the future. She simply was here and now. The woman who had gone through hell and found her heaven, who had lost everything and found herself, who had learned the most important thing. It is never too late to start over. The door creaked. Pavel came out onto the porch, hugged her from behind. What are you doing here? He whispered. I'm looking at the sea. And what do you see? Ludmila smiled and leaned her back against him. I see happiness, she said. My happiness. Finally mine. They stood together watching the sunrise, and the sea brought wave after wave to their feet. Endless, patient, eternal, like life itself, like love itself. And somewhere there, in the depths of the house, Paulina woke up and shouted in a crystal voice. Grandma! Grandpa! Let's go build castles. Ludmila laughed and went towards her granddaughter. The day was beginning. Share your impressions in the comments. Your opinion inspires. Like and subscribe help create more good stories. Have a wonderful day.